ever once prefer a usual girl like me.
Okay guys, so today's book is really exciting for me because it was such a surprise. I did not think I was gonna like it. It is Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly, and I love fairy tale retelling. So this one I knew I was gonna read, even though I have had mixed results with Jennifer Donnelly books. But Stepsister, if you cannot tell, revolves around the Cinderella fairy tale. But it comes from the stepsister's point of view. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, we get another one of those. Like, if you've read Wicked by Gregory Maguire, you know she's just misunderstood. She's not really wicked. This is not one of those books. And this is not a retelling. This is not a reconstruction of what we thought we knew. This is something that completely just tails off of it. And yes, the stepsisters were awful. The stepmother was terrible. But it's kind of it's a redemption story of sorts. And so I just thought it was super intelligent. And it was just such an easy, fun read that I recommend it to everyone. I actually read the book. And I loved it so much that I'm this close to buying the audiobook. I need to listen to a sample first. But this book was just so much fun. And you know me, I don't have time to read a book. And so being able to listen to this one over and over and over would be wonderful. The main character of Stepsister is one of the stepsisters, wouldn't you know it? And her name is Isabella. The other stepsister is Octavia. And not everybody's gonna agree with me on this. But one thing that I've always wanted to do is read the actual Grimm's fairy tales, because if you know anything, the Disney stories that we know are not the real stories. Grimm fairy tales, they're called Grimm for a reason. And so this book actually opens with the stepsisters mutilating themselves. If you don't know about it, what it is one sister, in order to get their feet to fit into the slipper, one sister cuts off her heel and the other sister cuts off her toes. Now, I should have gone and tried to read the Cinderella Grimm fairy tale. I just didn't. So I don't know how true to it this is, but what was able to tip the prince off to the fact that it wasn't really the girl he was looking for was a dove. Like, any time that the blood got on the ground, the dove would come down and be like, look, there's blood on the ground. So it opens up with the sisters mutilating themselves, only for them not to get what they want. Ella is discovered, they go and they live happily ever after. So now that the stepsisters and the stepmother's abuse of Ella has gotten out, they are shunned from society. Although I gotta say, my first impression was like, are they really gonna cut off parts of their feet? And yes, they really did. It kind of took me by surprise, but it was still super awesome because Donnelly did not shy away from the hard stuff. All the sisters are like, how are we gonna support ourselves? But actually, I forgot, the book doesn't really open there. The book opens, and I wasn't so sure about this at first, but it does tie into the novel as a whole, so you can't really get rid of it. But the opening is actually, if you know anything about the Fates, so if you've seen Hercules and you know those really ugly 3 witch sisters who all share an eyeball, it opens up with the Fates. And what they do is they draw a life map. And this other character named Chance comes in and he causes chaos in his attempts to steal one of these life maps. And whose life map do you think he steals? Isabella. The sisters catch him and he's like, all right, let's make a deal. So if I am able to change the course of her life, then I get to have more maps. And if I don't, so if you win the bet that her life is going to continue the way it continues, well then I guess I can never show my face here again. Now he and then one of the sisters, one of the Fates, they set off to go find Isabella. And so this part I really could have done without. I guess what it is introducing Chase Chance and his cast of characters, which, like, in the end, I did see how they were all necessary, but at the very beginning, it was super overwhelming because there's Chance, and then there's acrobats, and then there's an actress, and then there's an opera singer, and then there's a scientist. There's so many people in his party, and then there's monkeys, and you're just like, whoa. And they're in this foot race to get to Isabella first. And what Chance hadn't realized was where exactly Isabella's path was going to end up. How much devastation her choices were going to cause, in a sense. And then that is also intertwined with this other guy. He's like the villain of the book, named Volkman, which I gotta say, I felt like he was incredibly underdeveloped. This entire book we're hinted at the fact that Chance had a hand in Volkman's life map as well. And so we're in this situation as a whole because of Chance's involvement. And so the reality is Volkman is kind of an Adolf Hitler, where he's just taking over. And I just kept expecting to really get to see him, to get to see what kind of role did Chance play in his life that he redirected it from where it was supposed to go to where we are now at. And we didn't get any of that. We really didn't see Volkman until the end. And sometimes that's not a problem for me. Sometimes, like with the Peter Pan, with the Wendy Darling series, and the second book, Seas, where Peter never actually shows up. But it's the threat of Peter that creates all the tension and the suspense. Volkman, yes, we get a lot about the terror he's inflicting, but I guess it's because with the Wendy Darling series, we got enough background on Peter to be satisfied, to never see him in Seas. But in Stepsister, Volkman was just this bad entity. He was really flat. I think what happened was Chance, which if you don't understand, chance is indicative of having a chance or luck or whatever you want to associate with that word. So he was gambling with Volkman, and then somehow he lost like a buttload of money to Volkman, in which Volkman used to raise an army and raise the entire western portion of Europe or wherever they're actually at. They're in this foot race to Isabella to see who can influence her more, who can keep her on the track or to move her off of her life path. And then we also have Volkman, who is always in the background, always lurking. So now we have Octavia, Isabella, and their mother living in the grand manor that they had been living in. And the ugly stepsisters are ugly, right? And so Isabella says, everybody loved Ella because she was pretty. Ella got what she wanted because she was beautiful. So if I were beautiful, maybe I could have a good life too. And so she goes out into the field and she encounters the fairy godmother, which I think this is a really great character too. What is her name? Danaquil? Forgive me if I pronounce it wrong. She's not really a good fairy godmother. She just has magical abilities. And so then she gets into the mix. And what she tells Isabella is, you have to find the pieces of your heart. And when you can put your heart back together, then you can get your heart's true desire. Isabella's like, well, that wasn't very helpful. Like, what are the pieces of my heart? So she goes about trying to rectify things, and nobody wants anything to do with her. And what we learn, the three pieces of her heart are her old friend Felix, who is also her love interest, her horse, Morte, and then basically, I don't know, I think it's loving herself, but it also just, it's kind of true acceptance. Like she, that's what it is. Growing up, she and Octavia and Ella had all been friends, but then she started to see how differently they were treated. And then the stepmother kind of came in and tried to expand those cracks until they weren't friends anymore. And in that, she started to chip away at who Isabella was. Part of who she was an adventurer. Like she didn't want to wear dresses. She didn't want to find this fancy husband. And so she basically had to get back to that essence of herself. That's kind of the quest, but she doesn't actually believe this. She doesn't think it's literal pieces of her heart. She thinks it's metaphorical. Like, if I can be a better person, then that means my heart will be better. And as I said, she fails. So now Chance is getting in on it. So he figures out what the pieces of her heart are, and he's like, all right, so this is what we're gonna do. He orchestrates her to encounter all of these different pieces of her heart. Of course, fate is like, I can't let Chance have all the fun. Like, I can't let Chance get his way. So she sends Morte basically to the glue factory, and Isabella has to save him. She burns down their house, and then they have to go live with this really miserly woman who's awful. And then she's also living with this miserly woman. And so she's speaking into Isabella's life, and she's trying to make it so that Chance can't get things to change, so that Isabella won't change. And then Chance is trying to physically alter the map with his own ink, which are never quite strong enough. In any case, she gets all the pieces of her heart back together, and what she learns is that her relationship with Felix was destroyed or put to an end because of Ella. And so this was a really great point, because Ella, like, Cinderella is perfect. You know, there are no flaws in the Cinderella we know. And so even in this book, we're thinking, oh, she's just so perfect, only to realize she had a jealousy too. And so she was like, because this whole time, Isabella is thinking that her mother, because there was a note that was basically gonna be the whole meet you here, meet you there, we'll run off together. And so she's thinking that her mother had discovered this note. Well, in actuality, Ella is the one who found the note and destroyed it and tore the two apart. Volkmar is wreaking havoc. Nobody stands a chance. He captures Ella. And what we also learn is that the Grand Duke, who, you know, in the movie is the one, he's kind of a silly character, and he has the glass slipper and he lets it break because he trips. He is actually on Volkmar's side, as is the head of the king's army. We learn that they're all in it together, but they have kidnapped Ella. So Isabel. Sorry, I've been calling her the wrong name. I was like, Isabella and Ella, that's so similar. That can't be right. Isabel has to rescue Ella, and then they let the king know that, hey, like, you've got traitors. Actually, they don't even have to do that, because what happens is Isabel realizes that she can lead an army against Volkmar. She can be the hero in her own story, which is essentially what Daniquil is trying to teach her. Beauty isn't everything. She actually defeats Volkmar. She kills the traitorous Grand Duke. I don't actually remember who killed the general, but anyways, what had happened is Felix, I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but I'm really at the end. I'm trying to make it quick. Felix had wanted to be an artist, but he didn't have any money. So what he had been doing while he apprenticed for a local woodcutter, whatever, not woodcutter, but the guy who makes things out of wood has just been carving this little wooden army, and he's going to sell, there's like 2,000 pieces, and he's going to sell it to some rich guy, and that's going to fund him to Paris so that he can study painting and art things. And so Daniquil uses these little wooden soldiers as the army, and they help defeat Volkmar's forces, and there we go. And in the end, Isabel and Felix live happily ever after. Octavia gets to do her own thing, but to tie that up in a nice neat little bow, it was essentially a draw between Chance and the Fates. because Isabella essentially forged her own path, so neither one won. But he comes to them at the end of the book, and he's basically like, "Look, ladies, you win. I'm not gonna come back here anymore." And unbeknownst to them, all those little monkeys that I told you about are like stealing maps. And so even though he said that he wouldn't take any, he didn't say anything about his little monkeys. And, you know, as I said, there was a large cast of characters, which the whole book, he has been trying to get this play together. We really don't know what the play is about. We just know it's not going well, but it's integral to his winning. And so essentially what the play is showing Isabel that a woman can do things. A woman can be successful, can accomplish anything that a man can accomplish. That's what in the end gives Isabel the confidence to go forth with her plans. Even though I felt like some elements of this novel went a little bit overboard, were maybe unnecessary, that I found myself overwhelmed. On the whole, they worked together to get us to the end. And my takeaway was I really loved how this book, it was about acceptance, but it wasn't super obvious. So this is a little unfair. There is a book that I am beta reading for someone. So it's not fair because it's not done, okay? I get it. But what she is doing is she is so obvious about every social cause that she is trying to approach in this book that it's overwhelming. It's obnoxious. And for some people, maybe they like that. Maybe they like knowing that they're going to get into a book and it's going to be about XYZ cause. It's going to address social issues that we want to see represented overtly. In this one, it's not like that. I mean, yes, we know that it is essentially about Isabel accepting herself, but it's done in a very covert way. Like, we don't really know how everything is weaving together to get her where she needs to be because there are so many challenges in her way. It's just a really great progression. I wasn't sure about the whole Danaquil thing at first because she's very enigmatic. Like, you don't really know what role she is until a point where, so Chance had stolen the map. Fate wanted the map back. She enlisted this crow to steal it. The crow does, and then Chance is gonna steal it back, and then they're in this scuffle, and then Danaquil shows up. She's like, "Look, I'm gonna take the map. Okay, you two need to stay out of things." You really see how she was that mediator in the situation where she wasn't trying to manipulate Isabel. She was trying to give Isabel the tools she needed to be the person she needed to be. Even though I was really grossed out at the beginning because Isabel is the one who cut off her toes. And so even though I was really grossed out by the fact that they actually went through it, I liked seeing how her handicap actually made her stronger because she had to learn how to live with it. And then, I mean, what we end up happening is Felix makes her kind of a false foot. So then she's actually able to do some of the physical things that were required to finish the book. But I really enjoyed how she also saw it as, look, this is what I did for something I didn't even want. I didn't want to marry the king. I didn't want to marry the prince. But I cut my toes off for him. Liked how Donnelly took aspects that could seem really superficial and she made them, or she gave them purpose. I know I've been singing the book's praises, which there's a lot to sing about. So yes, like, this book was a grand slam for me. There were a couple issues. I know I mentioned some. And so the biggest ones for me were Volkmar and his underdevelopment. And then, you know, kind of too many characters. But the other major one for me was, as I said, this book was not a retelling. This book was not saying, look, the Stepsisters were actually really great, we just didn't know it. What we got from the Stepsisters was essentially two really sympathetic characters right off the bat. Yes, Isabel did say, particularly early on, we weren't that great to Ella. Like, yes, we were the ugly stepsisters. We were terrible to her. But I never saw that. I didn't see much character evolution in them. So in many ways it did feel like we were just misrepresented. And yes, they were gold at heart, and they just were bending to their mother's will. But you can become that kind of a person if that is how you behave for a certain period of time. Like, you essentially can brainwash yourself into thinking, this is how I need to behave. And so when the novel opens, they haven't learned any lessons. They're essentially destitute. Their reputation is in the trash. But they're not what you would expect. Like, I would expect these, if I'm thinking about the cartoon stepsisters from the Disney Cinderella, I'm expecting them to be sitting around with heirs, trying to order each other around, constantly lamenting about the fact that they don't have money. It's kind of like they don't yet realize they don't have money. The only character who sort of is in that headspace is their mother. And she's another little issue that I had, because I felt like she was a bit unnecessary. The destruction of her grand scheme of getting her daughters married off to the prince sent her over the edge. And so she's not, there's no way about it. Like, she has no sane moments. I didn't quite understand why we needed to keep her around, especially when the manor burned down. I thought that would have been the best place for Donnelly to get the mother out of the picture, because the whole deal is she is still stuck in the past. And so when Isabel goes to rescue her, she's at her dressing table trying to save objects that have, in the grand scheme of things, have no meaning. Like, they're not worth risking her life for. And so I thought it would have been a great moment for, her to go up with the house. I thought that was kind of where Donnelly failed the most, was her characters never had to go from here to here. Isabel just had to go from here to here. I guess maybe Donnelly was trying to achieve the flip in those moments where Isabel was, where she assumed the pieces of her heart were. And so she thought, oh, if I bring food to the orphanage, they'll see that I'm really not that bad. And then she ends up getting in an egg fight with the kids from the orphanage because they've heard bad things about her, and so they pick on her, so she retaliates, and we realize she's not that mature after all. And so I guess maybe it's those moments where she thinks she knows how to be good, but she doesn't have the capability to fully achieve that yet. I kind of wanted to hate her, is where I'm going with it. I wanted to hate her at the beginning. I wanted to despise her, to say, why does this girl need to have her own story? Yet, from the moment we meet her, when she is watching Octavia cut off her heel, and then she gets to having to cut off her own toes, she's pretty sympathetic. She's someone where, aside from the gruesomeness of it all, you're just like, don't do it, don't do it. You're too good for that. And I just don't want that. I wanted a ruthlessness. I wanted her to be thinking, all right, it's going to be painful, but I'm going to do it because I want to marry the prince. And we don't get that. We get, should I really be doing this? I think that she was really unsuccessful in convincing me that the stepsisters were really that bad. And I also wish that Octavia had a bit more of a storyline, aside from proving that women are intelligent, that women can do just as much as men. I don't quite know why she was there, what she really added, because she never had heart to hearts with Isabel. Like, she never kind of encouraged her one way or the other in pursuit of what Isabel wanted to pursue. Isabel never told her about her meeting with Danaquil. She never told her about the artifacts or the objects that Danaquil gave her. She never really told her. She did tell her, actually. Sorry, if this is a little bit messy, it's because it's been a minute since I actually read the book. I made my notes, but I should have done a little synopsis of the book. So there's some elements that I'm trying to remember because I've already returned the book to the library. But I think she did actually tell Octavia that she needed to find the pieces of her heart. So maybe she did actually tell her about meeting Danaquil. But like, aside from Octavia doing the sensible thing or giving the sensible advice of maybe there are literal pieces of your heart that you need to find. Or I guess literal is the wrong word, because literal would mean like her heart was out of her chest and sliced into three. But she's like, maybe, it's more of there are parts of you that are missing and you need to find out what those parts are. I didn't quite know what to do with Octavia. She was just one step above Maman, or Mama. I don't really know how you pronounce that in French. M-A-M-A-N. But yeah, she was just kind of a step above the mother in that she had purpose. Back to the theme, and this is the last thing I want to talk about. This book spoke to me in how we really do lose pieces. We give away pieces. We let people chip away at who we are so we can be accepted. It's easy to read a book and be like, oh, you made really bad decisions. How could you let this happen? But if you self-reflect and you think, what compromises have I made in my own life in order to fit a mold? I mean, hello, that was like my whole high school career. I had no clue who I was. I did what I thought would please others because I wanted friends. I wanted to feel accepted. Got a little bit better in college, but it really wasn't until I was out of college and doing my own thing that I was like, who cares if this is what I like to do? And I can really love myself. So I think if this is a really great book, people who love adventure, people who love fairy tale retellings, and people who maybe want a better handle on who they are, like figure out how to live your life. So Stepsister, 2 hearty thumbs up. Again, if you know that reference, leave me a comment. And while you're at it, I would love it if you would like this video, subscribe to my channel, help me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. Tell me about any more fairy tale retellings that you like. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. Bye.